Second film because it has better fights and more of them. Just a few words on this film. Gordon Liu is actually a friend of mine, so I've had the pleasure of talking with him and lent him some things, and he told me a lot of cool stories about this. When he was doing the scene, when he was surfing on those pieces of bamboo, he actually did do that. They didn't use wires. And it took him 2 weeks to film that sequence, and by 2 weeks he was able to do it just like you saw it in the movie. When he was hitting his head on the punching bags, remember I said that Jia-liang, the director, he loved authenticity in his techniques. Those bags were full of sand. And the ones that Gordon had to hit, it was like he was really nailing these things, and his heads were really swollen, and he got headaches, and fortunately he didn't throw up. The eye scene, he had migraines for 2 weeks after he did it, because he literally was doing this for about 9 hours. And so he was seeing double vision at the end of each day. But some interesting historical parts. Remember the guy in the graveyard, he was like killing the guy? He's a very famous martial artist named Hong Shiguan. And in real life, Hong Shiguan was one of those fellow 10 tigers of Shaolin. And in fact, Hong Shiguan and Monk Sunder, they trained by the same monk, a fellow named Jia-liang. And so they were actually very equal. In fact, I think most people would agree Hong Shiguan was a better martial artist in real life. So that guy didn't really learn from the Monk Sunder. The other guy, the one that wanted to make sure that that Monk Sunder was good, remember the one where he split the poles? And that's a guy named Lu Cai. Now Lu Cai was what was known as one of the 10 tigers of Canton. And he also learned from the same guy that taught Monk Sunder. So it's a little bit wrong with the history, but that's okay. And the final point, did you someone have a question there? No, I'm sorry, how much you see next? And the final point was the weapon, the 3-section staff, that was actually invented by the first emperor of the Song dynasty back in 960 AD. So that's about 700 years before this, the time frame of this movie. And it was something similar. The guy that, like I said, he was the first emperor of the Song dynasty, but before becoming the emperor, he was a bodyguard for the royal family. And his favorite weapon was just a stick. And what happened is one day when he was protecting the royal family, and he was attacked by 5 bandits, he hit a guy on the head and his stick broke at the end. But when you have a martial art weapon, it becomes a part of who you are, and you don't throw it out. So he kept the 2 bits, went to a blacksmith, and they attached it with 2 iron rings. So of course the weapon was weakened from the first strike, so the next time he hit someone, the other end broke. So you can see where that's going. So he had 3 pieces of stick attached by 2 pieces of iron ring, and that's the invention of the 3-section staff. Now the second film. We always talk about in martial arts yin-yang, the balance. You know, this was a male movie. The second film is about what is called the Yang family. And the Yang family, excuse me, let me just back up a bit. Again, it's directed by Jia-liang. And if you remember, I mentioned that family value and family is very important to him as some of the things he likes to investigate in movies. This is also a true story. This happened back in 1022 AD. At that time, there was a very famous family. They were good fighters with the spear. They were called the Yang family. And the Yang family elders, the males, was led by the patriarch of the family was Yang Te. I'm probably saying the name wrong. Yang Te. And he and his sons were tricked and were defeated by the Mongolians and were massacred. So then China had to be defended by these women. And the women was the matriarch of the family, and her name was Yang Seihui. And she had 6 granddaughters, 6 daughters, and 8 daughter-in-laws. And the head daughter was a lady named Wu Guiying. And so the 2 of them led the Chinese army to defeat the Mongolians. Now the film, the 8-diagram pole fighters, starts with the beginning of the family, the men being massacred. There are 2 survivors, Brother 5, which is played by Gordon Liu, the guy that just did Monk Sunder, and Brother 6, which was played by an actor named Alexander Fushen. So what happens is Brother 5 goes to the Shaolin Temple to learn how to use the pole. So the Chinese translation of the movie is actually, in Chinese, it's pronounced Wulang Bagua Gui, which means fifth brother goes to learn the Bagua pole, or 8-diagram pole. So that's basically, the movie is about this brother number 5 learning how to use the pole. The significance of this film, there are 3 things that are very important. Well, 2 important, 1 kind of weird. The first one is that it's the last film that Jia-liang does for Shaw Brothers. They had a split up, he went on his own. The second one, and this is kind of sad, is Alexander Fushin, fellow who plays number 6. He died during the filming of this movie. And Gordon told me that when he heard that he died, you know, he wouldn't cry in public because that wasn't the right thing for him to do as a martial artist. So during the film, when he has all the sad scenes where he must cry, he cried in real life. That's how he got rid of the emotion. And the final cool thing about this film, and you may not know this, has anyone seen Shrek 3? Now remember in Shrek 3, the women got together and they tried to fight Prince Charming because he was trying to take over the castle when all the men were gone. The co-director of that film was a Chinese director who was a big fan of this film, 8-diagram pole fighters. So the Queen Mother is basically the matriarch. He saw her as the matriarch of the young family. And Fiona, the ogre, that was basically the eldest daughter. So basically, the 8-diagram pole fighters was used as part of the plot design in Shrek 3. So does anyone have any questions about the first film that I could... Yeah.
The moat to the dining room, they actually cross the...
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. What was so important about this film is it was the first time anyone had ever seen what it was like for the Shaolin monks to train and what it meant and what they did as a Shaolin monk. There were 35 chambers, as the film implied. Each chamber was either a technique of physicality or something to develop the mind and the spirit. And so all that you saw in the movie is real. Those were the real ways that a monk would practice the martial arts. And that opened up the doors to make people like really freak out at the kind of stuff that they did. And as you saw, all the fight scenes, and even when they were doing the weapons, there were no fancy splits, there were no flips. That's not Shaolin Kung Fu. So when you see something like a Jet Li movie, that's wushu, that's sports. But what these guys were doing, and what Liu Jia-liang, the director, did, was authentic Shaolin martial arts.
That was a movie magic when they would cross the moat on those floating loose logs?
Probably, the one where he did, like, remember he jumped up in the air, that was movie magic. But when he was actually, they actually showed him stepping and skiing across, that was him. Okay.
Well, give us a couple of minutes while we queue up this.
Okay.